begin by thanking our sponsors for this evening, Charles and Janet Jaffe, who sponsored in honor of Rabbi Jeff and Shashi Wogelanter for all their years of leadership and modeling leadership for us, all their Torah, all their love, all their warmth. We truly love them, and we would not be having this learning opportunity tonight if not for them. And we are greatly indebted. And also sponsored by the Lotzoff family in memory of Cyril Lotzoff, whose yahrzeit was just this past week. His neshama should go to the highest points in Gan Eden and should have an aliyah through our learning. There are a few times where the Torah commands us to do something that is almost unquantifiable. We have a few examples, like the Mishnah in Peah tells us that there are some mitzvos that don't have a minimum requirement, any small amount you can give or you can do is counted as a fulfillment of the mitzvah, and there's no minimum requirement. An example of that is the mitzvah of peah, leaving off a corner of your field to the poor. There, the at least from a biblical standpoint, even if you leave just one stalk of grain in the corner of your field, that is enough to fulfill the mitzvah. The rabbis instituted, no, you have to leave at least a 60th, but from the Torah's perspective, one grain at the end of your field is sufficient. So we have examples where there is no minimum requirement, but we have very, very few examples in the Torah where there is a obligation to basically go to the absolute extreme maximum, to the point where you have to keep going until you reach the absolute most extreme level. I'll give you an example of that, where there's an obligation to go to the maximum possible. An obligation is the mitzvah of teshuvah, of repentance and returning to God, where the Torah tells us that we have an obligation to go ki hadavar karov mimcha me'od, that the matter teshuvah, the pasuk tells us in Sefer Devarim, is something that is karov elacha, is something that is close to you, me'od, that's very close to you. Now, very, from a Torah's perspective, from an infinite perspective, means however close you think you are, means you can get even closer, right? Which is why, by the way, the Me'or Einayim, who is not a direct student of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, but is a student of one of the founders of the Hasidic movement, and the Me'or Einayim of Mezhbuch, who was his Torah that he published in the Sefer Me'or Einayim is critical in what type of Hasidus we practice today and we adhere to today. It's one of the Svarim that is really widely learned, not even in non-Hasidic sects. And the Me'or Einayim explains. He says that the Sefer written by Rabbeinu Bechaya, the Musar Sefer, the Sefer on Jewish thought written by Rabbeinu Bechaya, that outlined. I have it right over here on the shelf. The Sefer Chovas Halavavos. The Sefer Chovas Halavavos, he has in his book over here. He says that tzaddikim do teshuvah even for their teshuvah, because however close you think you can get even closer. There's another mitzvah that we find in the Torah that has this same type of approach, meaning that however close you think you are, you have to go even more extreme. And that is the mitzvah, as is outlined in Sefer Devarim, in Parshas Ve'eschanan, Rak hishamer lecha, that one needs to guard themselves. Ushmor nafshecha, and you have to guard your well-being. You have to guard your soul, meaning your life. Me'od, very much so, meaning you have to guard yourself very well. There is an obligation from the Torah to go to the nth degree to make sure that you are not potentially putting yourself in harm's way or putting others in harm's way. And however extreme you think you are, you have to go to the next extreme, meaning that there's really no way of quantifying this. Even if it's going to put one person's life at risk or you at risk, then you have to make sure that you don't go to that extreme. The Rambam tells us, when he cites this halacha, he says, "V'chein kol michshol sheyesh bo sakanas nefashos," that any type of a stumbling block or any type of disease that would have sakanas nefashos, that would have any sort of potentially putting lives at danger, mitzvos esse lahasiro, there's an obligation from the Torah to try and get rid of it. Ulihishamer mimenu ulizar bedavar yafe yafe, that there's an obligation to be extremely focused on how you take care of yourself when that danger exists. Shne'amar, and he quotes our pasuk, Hishamer lecha ushmor nafshecha me'od. This obligation of making sure we take care of ourselves and we take care of our others in times of potential threat is the mitzvah that we fulfill on a daily basis during this pandemic that we are experiencing, the coronavirus pandemic. And even though we're starting to slowly rephase into things, we cannot even for a second think that there is not still a risk that exists. And as we just learned from the Rambam and straight from the Torah, that even if it means putting one person's life at risk, we have to be extremely careful of how we conduct ourselves. So I'd like to dedicate the next few sessions, the next mini series of great debates, great decisions, and great deciders to the Torah that has come out of the coronavirus pandemic. There have been questions that have been posed now to poskim that were never posed in the history of the world. And our great Gedolei Yisrael, through guidance and understanding of the facts from medical professionals, but they took all the information and all of the different questions that came up. Everything from, am I obligated to say Anim Zemiros at home now that the shul is closed, to things like, well, I ordered a Amazon package containing chametz before Pesach, that because of this pandemic, the Amazon delivery is delayed, and it's going to show up on my doorstep on Pesach. To things as severe as a doctor posing a question like, the hospital ran out of ventilators, and we're being very, very cautious and careful how we use and selective how we use our ventilators. 2 people have come in with breathing issues that should be put on ventilators. Who do I give my one ventilator to? Our postgame had to deal with all of this. And I have the privilege of having a close relationship with probably the Gadol Hador today, Rabbi Herschel Schechter Shlita, Moreno Rabbeinu, who even just saying his name, it makes me tremble and it sends chills down my spine, even just saying his name, who has been dealing with these issues, and I've been in direct contact with him, either asking some of these issues that have come up, some of these questions that have come up in our congregation. People have posed to me that I pass along to him, and him telling me different halachos. I want to just show everyone that this right here is one of 2 folders of the same size, one of 2 folders that I have with all of my notes and collections of teshuvas, of responsa that have been written during this time, during the coronavirus era. There are literally volumes volumes of Torah being written. And I just want to share with you again, even as I'm saying it, I feel goosebumps on my body, that Reb Chaim Ozer Grudinsky Zatzal, in his Sefer Achiezer, Reb Chaim Ozer Grudinsky, who was the Posek Hador in Europe during World War II, he passed away in 42. He was not killed by the Nazis, but he was living in Vilna during that era, and he was dealing with these life and death type of shilas. And in the introduction to his third volume, which he published in I think 1940 or 1941, he has in his introduction to the work, he deals with a question, which is, it costs a lot of money to publish Sfarim like the Achiezer, and we are right now in a period where money can go a long way to save people's lives. So he grappled with the question, which is, where should I send my money? Should I use my money to publish a sefer? Or should I use the money I collect better to go and potentially save people's lives? And he concludes and he says that publishing the sefer will save more people's lives than using whatever money I attain that would have been used to publish a sefer to directly save people's lives. And he explains, because we know that Torah has always been the nitzel, has always been the sama dechaya, has always been the life preserver of the Jewish people, and therefore bringing more Torah into the world during a time of then was a genocide against the Jewish people will certainly save more lives than whatever money I would have otherwise used to try and directly help save people's lives. And I think that during this time, during the coronavirus period that we are experiencing, and although we're opening things up, but you still watch the news and there are still people dying from it. And I know that information is sparse and incomplete in terms of why it is that this virus is killing people. Is it really the virus? Is it maybe that we should open everything up? No, we should close everything back down again. And that I would imagine also gets into the political realm, and that's not the point of this series. The point of the series is really just to look at some of these major decisions that needed to be made during this time and how they came to the conclusions that they came to. But before we delve right into the series, which this week is going to act as an introduction to the series, I want to take a step back, and this Wednesday night class is called Great Debates, which we're going to see there were a number of debates that took place during this time in the realm of halacha and the realm of Torah. Great decisions. We're going to discuss the really historic questions that came up. Again, like I showed you, my folders, we could discuss these shilas for years to go through every single one in detail. But we're going to focus on a few select over the course of the next few weeks that were really historic in the responsa. But also, we focus on the great deciders, who it is that are making these decisions. And I'd like to spend tonight to discuss, who can qualify as a great decider, and who are really the two giants that are making these decisions for Klal Yisrael. One of them, as we already mentioned, Morenu v'Rabbeinu, my teacher, Hagaon Rabbi Herschel Schechter Shlita, and also in Eretz Yisrael, and Rav Schechter's really been focused in the United States. In Eretz Yisrael, the leader in answering the shilas, the great decider, is Rabbi Usher Weiss, who I'd like to discuss a little bit in terms of who these people are, their stature, and really what makes a great leader in Klal Yisrael to begin with. The Gemara tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was a very, very tall person, extremely tall. The Gemara discusses that part of the definition what are the parameters to violating the prohibition of carrying on Shabbos. So the Gemara tells us that one of the conditions one must meet in order to violate the problematic activity of carrying on Shabbos on a biblical level is to carry in the same manner as the Bnei Kahas. Now, the Bnei Kahas were the Levites, the Levium, that due to their very large build and their large frame, they were given the job of doing the heavy lifting, of carrying the Mishkan. During the construction of the Mishkan, and as they were traveling through the wilderness, it was the Bnei Kahas that carried the Mishkan. And therefore, we learn from them how something is supposed to be, quote unquote, properly carried, as they were these, professional carriers. And that's the model to know in what way one is supposed to carry something to violate Shabbos. So when discussing the large build and frame of the Levium, so the Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph reveals to us that Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a Levi, as the Torah tells us in the beginning of Parshat Shmos, Vayikach ish mibeis Levi, yikach es bas Levi. That there was a man from the tribe of Levi that took a woman as a wife from the tribe of Levi, and that was Moshe Rabbeinu's parents. And he was in fact a very tall man. In fact, the Gemara reveals to us that Moshe Rabbeinu was somewhere between 15 to 20 feet tall. Can you imagine our greatest leader, our greatest Navi that ever was and ever will be? As the Rambam says, if you don't believe that Moshe Rabbeinu was, then you are a heretic. Can you imagine that great Navi, Moshe Rabbeinu, would have been had his own section in the Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts, at the Basketball Hall of Fame. Interestingly enough, by the way, just to point out, modern society also tends to put trust and leadership into very tall individuals. Just a fun fact. I was reading an article by Rabbi Ozer Glicksman, who's he unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He was a Rebbe at YU, but also taught economics at YU. Really a fascinating individual. So he wrote an article a number of years back about leadership, and over there he tells an amazing anecdote where he really found himself falling into this social phenomenon, where he says that he once had a meeting set up in a hotel in Paris, whatever, that a mutual friend of his, and was friends with a CEO of this Fortune 500 company, and wanted the three of them to meet together to talk, to get to know each other. Okay, fine. And he says that even though he had been email corresponding with this CEO on a number of different economic and political issues, he never Googled this person. He never, thought to, I guess. And therefore he's sitting in this hotel lobby in Paris, and he didn't know who to look for. He's watching all these people coming through the door, and he didn't know who his guest was, who the person he was meeting with was. So he says that he found himself, scanning a succession of people emerging through the revolving glass door to the hotel, and he was eliminating people right off the bat. He knew they're too young or too hip, too fresh, wrong nationality, whatever. But then after he said that about a dozen good candidates walked through the door, past the elevators, he found himself realizing that he was only focusing on very tall individuals. He just assumed that the CEO of this Fortune 500 company would be a tall person. As it turns out, Malcolm Gladwell surveyed Fortune 500 CEOs and journalists, and he found that 58% of his male respondents were 6-footers, which the corresponding percentage of males in the general population is less than 15%. Just interesting how I don't know what it means. Just interesting, a little fun fact. But anyway, Chazal tells us Moshe Rabbeinu was a very, very tall person, and the Gemara then goes on to say that Well, it makes sense that Moshe Rabbeinu was tall, because the Gemara says, "Ein hashchina shore ela al chacham gibor v'ashir ubal koma," that the Shechina only rests upon someone who's wise, strong, wealthy, and a bal koma, tall. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu must have been a bal koma, a tall man, because otherwise he wouldn't have been chosen to be the leader of Klal Yisrael. Now, it seems a bit strange, right? You have to ask the question: just because someone's tall, that makes them into a great leader? Rav Moshe Feinstein, not Moshe Rabbeinu, but Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was the Posek Hador, that if he was alive today, he'd be the one that would be answering these shilas. Rav Moshe Feinstein was a short little man, very, very short man. He was, I think, 5'4". Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'das, was, I think, like 5'1". Right? But you have to be tall to be a great leader. Well, what does that even mean? So I think that the answer could lie in a very similar but noticeably different passage in Chazal. And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos tells us a statement from Ben Zoma. Ben Zoma Omer, Ben Zoma said, Ezehu Chacham, I'm sure a Mishnah that you guys have heard before, that who is a wise man, who is a wise person, Halomed Mikol Adam, one who can learn something from everyone. Ezehu Gibor, what's the definition of someone who's strong? Hakovesh Es Yisro, someone who suppresses their own desires. Ezehu Asher, what's the definition of someone who's wealthy? Hasameach Bechalko, someone who's happy with their lot. Ezu mechubad, who's respected, hamachabed es habrios, someone who shows respect to others. Now, the glaring connection between these two passages in Chazal are the first three characteristics that are listed in each Chazal, both the Gemara in Shabbos and this Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Remember, the Gemara in Shabbos said, "Ein hashchina shoreh," that the Shechina, God's omnipresence, only rests Ella al Chacham, someone who's wise, Gibor, strong, the usher, and wealthy. And Ben Zoma told us that a Chacham is someone that can learn from anyone. A Gibor is someone who suppresses their own desires. And an usher is someone who's happy. So the fourth one then must be connected. That Ezehu, the Ein Hashchina Shoreh Ella al Chacham, Gibor, v'Ashir. And then what's the fourth characteristic? Bal Koma, someone who's tall, must be connected then with Ezehu Mechubad, who is the one that is respected, Hamechabed es Habrios, someone who shows respect for others. Meaning that Bal Koma, that someone who is very tall, it doesn't mean physically tall, but it could be that Ben Zoma is elucidating for us and explaining to us that what does it mean, Bal Koma? But rather, Bal Koma doesn't mean tall, but it could mean a person of stature, i.e. someone you look up to, a leader. That what does it mean that Ezu Mechubad Hamachabed es Habrios? That the definition of leadership is the ability to show respect to others. And really what Ben Zoma is listing for us, these four characteristics, is really the definition of what makes a good Jewish leader. That in order to be one of the great deciders, you need to have these four characteristics. You need to be someone who is a chacham, a gibor, someone who is strong, meaning that they know how to suppress their own desires, someone who's wise, meaning they can learn from other people, someone who is happy with what they have. That's a definition of an usher, and someone who can show respect to others. And it's these four characteristics that are the four characteristics that can make up someone who is a great decider, a great leader amongst Klal Yisrael. Rav Moshe Feinstein himself writes in the introduction to his work, the Igros Moshe. The Igros Moshe sits right over here on the shelf. The Igros Moshe is the major responsa that we have in American Jewry, where the Igros Moshe, written by Rav Moshe Feinstein, passed away in 1986. He was the Posek Hador. Now, he writes in the introduction that, he says, I don't feel that I'm adequate to be, this posek. But, people keep asking me shilas, they keep asking me questions. And so I'm going to keep answering them because there's, for whatever reason, they feel as though I'm the only person that can answer these questions. That's a true leader. Someone who's willing to look beyond themselves. It's not about me, but it's about other people. Okay, they want me to, so therefore I'm going to step in. These four characteristics are shared between our two great deciders during this era, by Rav Asher Weiss Shlita and by Rav Hershel Schachter. And I know firsthand from Rav Schachter, Rav Schachter, just to give you a little bit of a biography of who Rav Schachter is. So Rav Schachter grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. His father was a pulpit rabbi. And he went to high school in MTA in the Talmudic Academy, the high school, the Jewish high school, Yeshiva high school that's associated with Yeshiva University. And so he was an out-of-towner in Yeshiva over there. His parents used to say that when he would come home, because he wouldn't, let's say, go to school one week, come home for Shabbos, but then he would, let's say, be a little under the weather, so he wouldn't go in Monday, they'd send him Tuesday, or he'd stay home for the week if he was really not feeling well. That during that period, while he was home, quote unquote sick, he would lie in bed sick, but would be learning nonstop the writings of the great Gedolei Yisrael. That he would lie in bed sick as a puppy, and would be learning through the Moadim Uzmanim from Rav Sternbach and other great writings that we have. This is the type of individual we're talking about. Already from a very, very young age, when he was 13 years old and he was a ninth grader in yeshiva, he learned with Rav Moshe David Tendler, who is Rav Moshe Feinstein's son-in-law. He is one of the great deciders in the area of Jewish medical ethics. And he was his ninth grade Rebbe in high school. He said that he learned 40 blot of Gemara Ashitosis and Bava Kama with Rav Tendler, and they only skipped one Tosfos. And he tells us over the things that Rav Tendler told them in yeshiva when he was a ninth grader, when he was 13 years old. Then after that, they realized that Rav Schachter was way too smart to just go into the 10th grade Gemara class. And in 12th grade, they already put him in Rabbi Yerucham Gorelik's Gemara Shir, the 12th grade Shir. And then after that point, they already put him to learn with Rabbi Yasha Ber Soloveitchik, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, the Rav, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva University, already when he was 15, 16 years old. And he learned in the Rav Shir for about 10 years, from the time he was 16 till he was 26. He learned in Rav Soloveitchik Shir. At the age of 22, Rabbi Soloveitchik asked him to be his assistant, which meant that he would give Shir on behalf of Rav Soloveitchik on the days that the Rav couldn't make it. Now you have to understand, Rav Soloveitchik was the Gadol Hador at the time, right along with Rav Moshe Feinstein. And now we're talking about probably the greatest Talmudist to live in the United States in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Rabbi Soloveitchik asked his 22-year-old student at the time, Hershel, if on the days he's not there, which meant every Friday, Sunday, and Monday, Rav Schachter would teach the class in his stead at the age of 22. At the age of 26, Dr. Belkin, who was the president of Yeshiva University at the time, offered Rav Schachter to become a Rosh Yeshiva at YU at the age of 26. At the age of 31, he was the Rosh Kola. And it's just, that in and of itself would be something that's impressive. But like I've heard from my Rebbe Rav Schachter many times, that those stats, or not, he's not talking about his own stats, but stats about Gedolim is not what's impressive. What's impressive about Gedolim is the work that they put into their learning. I've shared the story many times of how Rav Schachter, when he was a young man, went to go visit the Stipler. And the Stipler Gaon, after Rav Shechter asked him if he could have a bracha for growth in Torah learning. So the Stipler said, all the blessings in the world won't make you into a Talmud Chacham. The only way you're going to become a Talmud Chacham is by sitting and learning. That's the only way you're going to become a Talmud Chacham. And there was one time, and I'll never forget it, that I was going to my parents for Pesach. I walk into the YU base medrash in order that I could pick up my Gemara, and while I go into the YU base medrash to go get my Gemara, I walk in and I see an empty base medrash, except for Morenu v'Rabbeinu Rav Shechter sitting there, writing a responsa to someone related to Pesach and the like. And I see next to him a Gemara. The Gemara is open to Psachim Daf Beis. Just before Pesach, what's he doing? He's sitting in the Beis Medrash non-stop, just learning. I used to sit, if you can see my screen, I used to sit right over here and just watch Rav Shechter. Right over here, I used to sit. Watch Rav Shechter, literally, for hours on end, non-stop learning Torah. This is how you become a Baal Koma. I can go on for hours with different stories about Rav Shechter, but I want to just share two amazing clips from. I want to share two amazing clips from. Where am I? I want to share two amazing clips. You can see the pasuk in Chumash again, right? Yeah? Okay. I want to share two amazing clips from Rav Asher Weiss Shlita about, the severity of answering questions during the coronavirus era.
For a pasuk to have to deal with questions that will determine mi yichya v'mi yamos is really frightening. It's terrifying. And for these type of shilas, we need the Ramban and the Rashba. But we don't have the Ramban and the Rashba. So
just like we said from Rav Moshe Feinstein, they're not looking to be the people that have to answer these shilas. This is Rav Asher Weiss in Eretz Yisrael. But and he's saying that, if we had the Ramban and the Rashba, man, and it would be so much better. But okay, I guess there's no one else. I guess I'm gonna have to.
Someone needs to step up and deal with his questions and give guidance. So we really need to daven for tremendous siyata d'shmaya, and with tremendous humility and humbleness, stand before a Kodesh Baruch Hu and asking He should give us guidance and siyata d'shmaya shalom nikosher b'dvar halacha. Because if chas v'sholom we are nichshel b'dvar halacha,
meaning if we make a mistake in the psak that we give himself or Rav Shechter during this time,
we're dealing with halachas which are achamurim shebet Torah. We're dealing with questions of life and death. But we cannot shy away, and it is our responsibility and obligation. So I stand before you like a shliach tzibur musaf in Yom Kippur, starting his tefillah with hineni ha'oni memas nir.
That before musaf on Yom Kippur, the chazan, basically has a tefillah, a personal tefillah that he makes to Hashem, saying that I know that I'm not the one who is most appropriate to be the one who stands before you on behalf of the congregation, but kind of like, what choice do I have? They appointed me, and therefore I have to just try my best.
That's the way I feel in this past week or 2 weeks, answering shilas day and night from all over the world. many of them really dealing with questions of Chayim and Mavis.
Rav Asher Weiss, along with Rav Schechter, have this exact feeling, this weight on their shoulders every time they paskin a shaila related to the issues pertaining to coronavirus. I'll give you just a personal example that and it's not directly related to coronavirus, but how just an example of how our poskim really take every single shaila they get really to heart. A couple years ago, unfortunately, my grandmother passed away, and during her last days and weeks, there were different questions that came up that needed very broad shoulders. So I was on the phone with Rav Schechter a number of times, and again, this is December. After I left yeshiva. I left yeshiva in June, and I moved to California. I hadn't seen Rav Schechter in already 6 months. So I called him to ask him these questions, assuming he didn't really let's say even remember me, and I'm not speaking to him in face, so there's no facial recognition. It's all over the phone. There's no Zoom. So I'm asking these questions, and of course he's sensitive on the phone. He's answering them directly, and a couple of weeks had gone by, and Rav Schechter was scheduled to have a scholar in residence in Los Angeles. He was giving a shir on Friday at 8 a.m. in a kollel in Los Angeles. So I got in the car at 5 a.m. so I can go hear my Rabbi give a shir. So I get to the Beis Medrash over there, and I'm sitting and learning. And Rav Schechter walks into the Beis Medrash, and before I have an opportunity even to reintroduce myself, he looks at me and he says, "Reb Daniel, tell me, what's the update with your grandmother? How's she doing?" Every single shaila that they're getting is like an embodiment of their tzelem Elokim, where we are all given this certain tzelem Elokim, this image of God. We're all created in this image of God, meaning that just as God deals with the entire klal, he deals with the Jewish people on a macro level, but then we each are considered like a single child before Hashem, the way that he loves each and every one of us. Our great Gedolei Yisrael really live by that their Tzelem Elokim shines in the way that they are able to carry the klal on their shoulders, but even individuals, just small, just each and every one of us, the care and concern that goes into how they answer the subjective questions is so, so dearing. I want to just share with you one more clip from Rabbi Asher Weiss before we end, related to a question that has come up, which is, people feel as though maybe this is the era of Mashiach during this time, and what can we do to hasten the bringing of Mashiach during the coronavirus era? And he's responding to this question related to Mashiach and the coronavirus. Listen to how he responds to this question. Again, listen between his words to the sensitivity to the people that would be asking this question.
2 months ago, coming out of Purim and going into Pesach and entering Nisan,
you could hear it?
There was a strong feeling that perhaps we're living in a time that Mashiach is coming, and this is part of that eventuality. Can the Rav address almost the impossible question to address about how are we to view our role in this achdus of bringing people together towards bringing Mashiach, or is there anything that we can do, or any perspective that the Rav can share with us as it relates to that?
What I have learned from my rabbis is Mashiach will come b'Hesach Hadas. Whatever we do is associated with Bias HaMashiach. But it is not within our power to deal with Mashiach directly. You learn, you daven, you're diligent in your performance of mitzvahs. You serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you try to achieve Kirvas Elokim. And that is what we could do to hasten Bias HaMashiach. Many times in the past, people became overly excited about Bias HaMashiach, and many times it ended with tragedy and with brokenheartedness. Mashiach will come whenever HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides that his time is to come. But yes, whatever we do, from the day we're born to the very last breath of our lives, we are waiting for Mashiach. So I don't know whether Mashiach will come tomorrow or a day after tomorrow. I don't know whether coronavirus is in any closer way associated with Mashiach, but whatever we do, and when we serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu, it is our contribution to Keitz Hayomin and to Bias HaGoyel B'Meiro V'Yomeinu.
There's a time, 2 months.
The amazing shoulders that are attached to Rav Hershel Schachter and Rav Usher Weiss, who we, during this period, Jews all over the world should feel indebted to their very broad shoulders, is what really makes them into the great deciders that we're going to be learning their Torah from over the next few weeks. The sensitivity that they carry, the fact that they are open and understanding and sensitive to the issues, the fact that they care so much about what it says in that pasuk of Yishmer lecha ushmor nafshecha me'od, that we have to be extremely cautious, which, by the way, people ask, they ask me questions. A lot of people ask me and say, you know what, the churches, opened much, before the synagogues, and not only they opened before the synagogues, but even when they opened, they're letting more people into the building. So we should do the same thing. So I gave them an answer, and I wasn't sure if my answer was right. So I called up Rav Schachter and I said, Rebbe, people are asking me this question. Can you just confirm that the answer I'm giving is correct? And I said that, and I'm telling them something that I think I heard from you, but I don't want to be misquoting you. So he said, well, what are you telling them? So I said, what Rav Schachter teaches us all the time is that, we, the Jewish people, were chosen as the Am HaNivchar, the chosen nation. What does it mean to be the chosen people? So the Ramban says that what it means to be the chosen people is that we are the Or Lagoyim, that we are supposed to be the model for the other nations, that we are supposed to model the sanctity and the importance of human life. And therefore, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world does. It doesn't even matter necessarily what the government says to do or not to do. At the end of the day, we can't break the law. Okay, fine. But then, once there's even an allowance, we have to be so careful. It doesn't matter what happens in other parts of the world or other parts of San Diego, or we have a responsibility to follow what it says in the Torah, which is to take care of ourselves to me'od, that extreme level. And Schachter said, that's what I would say. So, but it's this kind of sensitivity, it's these broad shoulders that we have been reliant on over these last few weeks. And I'm looking forward that over the next few weeks, as we go a little bit back in time to look at some of the major historic issues that have come up, that have never come up before in Klal Yisrael, and how our great poskim, Rabbi Hershel Schachter and Rabbi Usher Weiss, dealt with these issues directly. There are going to be issues we're going to deal with related to, I'll give you just a preview of some of the things we're going to be dealing with. The correct behavior when dealing with danger. Just how diligent do we have to be? Does one have to continue paying tuition to schools during a time like this, where schools got shut down in the middle of the school year? The ventilator question of, you have one ventilator, you need to choose. What to do about a wedding that can't have the requisite 10 people involved. People that are alone. The use of certain technologies on Shabbos and Yom Tov, when that would be allowed, would that be allowed, and questions of that nature. I look forward to going through these questions together to learn the Torah of our great Gedolim, to be misabik ba'afar ragleihem, to attach ourselves to them, to their Torah, and to their ways. And as Rabbi Usher Weiss said, every small thing we do in our avodas Hashem, every learning we do, especially when we learn as a group like this on Wednesday nights, is going to be something that is going to bring Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mehera b'yameinu. All right, we'll stop here. I'm sorry tonight I can't hang around for more questions. Please shoot me an email or call me if you have any questions. But I'm late for another meeting, so I have to sign off at this time. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good night,
very much.
everyone.
Good night.